All right. I know it's been a minute. I know it's been over a year, guys. We're going to try and get more regular with our posts again, try and get more engagement, bring you guys up to speed on what we've been working on. A lot of irons in the fire. I had to take a little bit of a content hiatus. I know I didn't really have much before, but we're gonna try and even increase upon that frequency. We know that we've got some knowledge we need to bring to the market because we've got some new products coming to the market. Our website launched, so that's been huge for us, and it'll be a nice platform to help kick off this new product that we just got to finish a little beta testing and some patent work, and then I'll be able to dig into some details on that. But for now, we're going to lay a little groundwork for the basic knowledge of what exactly we are solving and how we are doing so. So, we're going to try and do our best to break things down into layman terms. We're going to use some hydraulic charts here. Essentially helps us map out exactly what happens hydraulically with the different solenoids, check balls, stuff like that. And show you guys, because everything's going to center around the solenoid switch valve and the RFEs. And so we're going to start by showing how the earlier RFE transmissions worked hydraulically with the solenoid switch valve, and then we're going to move a little bit into the 2019 and newer, and that'll kind of help lay out again some groundwork for what we're trying to do, so people can better understand exactly how we are solving the problem that we're trying to solve. We were hoping to have everything finished up before PRI 2023 December. We actually had a booth there. We were hoping to debut all of this there. We had a couple little setbacks, and then just life in general. So we're finally getting back after it, and we're getting excited about it. So it's time to start bringing a little knowledge and an understanding to what we got going on. So I say we're going to start with the early version of the valve body, and so we can see the original function of the solenoid switch valve, which actually goes back to 99, when the RFE family originally came out and in gas applications, so we can understand exactly how this works and what the solenoid switch valve actually does, and was originally designed for. And so one thing I want to get out of the way, just because it's a little bit of a pet peeve, is the fact that they even call this the low reverse solenoid, right? It's really just the low and converter clutch, so low and lockup is really all this thing does, and that is exactly what the solenoid switch valve does, is it switches the function from low to lockup. Because as we can see here, this is reverse, okay? So it's our hydraulic flow for reverse. We've got the multi-select solenoid actually opened up, feeds directly through the manual valve in the reverse position, okay? Comes up and feeds the lower reverse clutch, all right? And then when we go into first gear, now we see our low and lockup, I'm going to call it, solenoid actually has came on and is now feeding the low reverse clutch through the solenoid switch valve, okay? And so then as soon as we go into second gear, we get there's a shared feed between the 2C and the 4C clutch. 2C is on in second and sixth in the 6 speeds. And so as soon as it applies in second gear, it sends oil through this shared circuit here between those two. Number 5 check ball blocks off the one that's not being used so it doesn't backfeed. Comes over and it switches the switch valve to the left. It strokes it, okay? And then we see the underdrive oil gets opened up because in this position in first, the underdrive oil is blocked. It can't go anywhere, right? So down here, as soon as it strokes, now the underdrive oil comes through and it can actually get into the backside here, and that acts as a latch, okay? It keeps the solenoid switch valve from being able to move, particularly during, like, say, the 2-3 handoff, okay? So the 2C needs to release and the 4C needs to apply, and in that time, as this one's releasing and this one's applying, this shared circuit between the two actually drops to about 40 to 60 psi, depending on how hard you're on it, from the data that we got while we were working on things for the 19 and newer stuff, trying to see if I could make them work in the 18 and older. Unfortunately, it didn't. We could not just make it hydraulically work out. So, but anyways, so I say this drops, and it drops enough that if we did not have this latch oil, we're going to call it, in the underdrive side, the solenoid switch valve would actually stroke back into the low side. And say you have a tune that has lockup occurring in second and stays locked into third, if that were to happen without that latch oil, it'll actually stroke over and it'll apply your lower reverse clutch while you're in, going into third gear, and it'll burn it up. So to prevent that, they did that. Now, same thing, same idea. When you get into, they're calling it direct gear, it's fourth gear, you got underdrive and overdrive come on. Okay, and overdrive actually is coming on at that time. 4C would release, overdrive applies. And we see we have oil off of the overdrive circuit that comes down to the solenoid switch valve end plugs, our latch plugs we're going to call them, and latches them so as that when you go into fifth gear and your underdrive oil is removed, right, and the 4C oil is coming on, it actually keeps it from being able to, again, during that 4-5 shift, it would have the opportunity, because the pressure wouldn't be high enough in this shared circuit off of the 2C and 4C, it makes it to where it cannot unlock the converter hydraulically by switching this valve during that shift. So your overdrive oil becomes a latch, is what it is. And the problem is these little latch plugs are so short and so unstable, and they're only fed from the top, and which I can show you here in a second, that they just tear the bore up. And we'll actually vacuum check this guy over here and show you just how terrible they can get. And yeah, it wreaks havoc on the overdrive clutch, because the overdrive clutch does not have, and any of the clutches do not have, a specific pressure sensor. They have what they call a pressure switch. Okay, and that pressure switch doesn't release until, as far as switch function, until about 30 psi, and it takes 20 psi just to apply a clutch. Okay, so if this thing turns off, and when it's not supposed to, say it's supposed to be applied, and it shuts off, you get your code P0871, your overdrive pressure switch rationality, right? The death knell. Everyone knows that that's a problem. And the reason being is, again, like I say, it has to drop below 30 psi in this circuit for it to see and know that there's a problem with that pressure switch. So if it takes 20 psi just to apply the clutch, and you've got to drop below 30 psi before that pressure switch gets mad, well, it's no wonder that we can't keep an overdrive clutch in, because it's leaking so bad over here in these end plugs. It's just blowing all the pressure off on this end, leaking it all off, and so now the overdrive clutch can't hold. It wouldn't matter if you had 30 clutches in there. Without any pressure, it's not going to work. It can't hold. So that's why we always have to ream these and restore this bore, and that's how we keep the overdrives from burning out. The only thing that sucks is, like these later valve bodies are hard anodized. When you ream them out, now your hard anodizing is gone. It's only a couple thousand deep, and we ream these things out anywhere from 10 to 20 thousandths, depending on which valve we use. So we're going way past where they're hardened. So all we're doing really is restarting the clock. But that is how the original function of the solenoid switch valve was designed. Okay, and now the irritating part is that the solenoid switch valve in the 19 and newer trucks doesn't even do anything. We're in second gear EMCC. Okay, so that's lockup, just like we had illustrated here. Second gear EMCC. Since we've got the lower reverse solenoid actually pulse width modulating to lock up through partial lockup and apply the clutch gradually. Pardon me. And so now we come down here. Again, we're in second gear lockup, and lower reverse solenoid is doing nothing, because when you get to that side of the circuit, it goes nowhere because it's all blocked off. It just would deadhead. Even if it did turn on, it would just deadhead, because you have a complete separate auxiliary valve body in the lower part of the valve body now that is specifically for lockup in the 19 and newer trucks. This solenoid switch valve is down here stroking, and these latch plugs are down here doing all this work back and forth, being unstable, cutting into the bore, making it leak overdrive oil for nothing. So that is where we took our steps to completely redesign this, and we're actually pretty excited to bring that to market because it will completely end that. So I wish we could have made it work in the 18 and older stuff, but for sure, you know, we're really happy with what we're seeing in the 19 and newer stuff. So yeah, it's aggravating. So we'll move on here and start showing things in the valve body. So I'm gonna set up my vacuum testers so you can see what we got going on for starters, and then I'll pull this apart and we'll actually inspect the bore. All right, so we're set up to vacuum check this this latch valve for the overdrive side of things, and this one isn't even one of the worst ones that we've seen, but in a perfect world we would see 25 inches of vacuum. Minimum they want to see is 16 inches of vacuum. I personally like to see at least 20. So we're going to turn on the vacuum pump. We're going to see where this one goes. We're at 12 inches of vacuum. And that's how we know for sure that our aha moment, we'll call it, the cause to the original failure this valve body came out of for this transmission for the overdrive clutches was a leak in that overdrive circuit, that latch circuit, like we explained before. And this is super common. We see it time and time again. They are always worn out, and the only thing that sucks is these are hard anodized, and the hard anodizing is only a couple thousandths thick. And so when we ream these things to straighten these bores out and make them seal again, we take them anywhere from 10 to 20 thousandths, depending on which brand solenoid switch valve bore lineup we use. And so we're out of that hard anodizing. And, you know, we just, there's no good solution to keep it happy long term. All we're doing is resetting the clock to a degree. Sonax at least came up with their latch valves have got a little, come on guys, open up. They've got a little peg that goes between them to help stabilize them. But at the end of the day, we still see these come in worn too, and that's what really sucks. The Sonax one is the 20 thousandths over. Okay, there is nothing bigger. When these wear the bore out, this casting is junk. We can't do anything with sleeving it. It's too thin across the top to do anything with a sleeve. It's just, you know, a proper sleeve anyways. And there's nothing we can do once these things are wore out. They're wore out, and so it's just something that plagues them. And as I mentioned before, you know, we've got the fluid only feeds from the top of these latch plugs because they're too short to be stable enough to feed them all the way around. They would actually cock in the bore even worse if they had a fully open passage like the valve does here, where it can get oil all the way around it. So, you know, time and time again, we see this as a problem. And it's just, there's no reason for it in the 19 and newer valve bodies. You know, it's still present, but as we saw, it's hydraulically useless. It does nothing. It just sits in there and strokes and wears that out and leaks off your overdrive oil. So, like I said, that's something that we've managed to solve in these. We've got some other ideas for these that we're working on. It's going to take a little longer to get that worked out, but yeah, that's what we find all the time is these things vacuum check in here just horribly. They'll vacuum check terrible over here too. This end of this valve lineup here, as far as the valve itself, is also unstable. It puts a lot of load on this poor little end here, which is where the oil comes in. That will actually put it in the low side. And so, you know, Sonax, of course, oversizes that as well and restores that hydraulic integrity, whereas Transgo actually puts a spring in here. So is that it doesn't matter if this is leaking a little bit, it still has the ability, just by the spring even, to allow it to push over into the low side when the latch oil is removed. So interesting ways that both companies go about things. The Transgo latch valve or latch plugs are also more rounded on the edges, so they don't eat into the bore as bad. But again, you know, we see those worn out too. You know, after years in service, they've been around a while, and so we'll have to bore the latch plugs out with the Sonax side to at least go oversize. And again, like I say, once we do that, once those wear out, valve body's junk. So we've actually got a solution for that for these wore out older ones coming, but say we've also got something sooner we'll be debuting for the 19 and newer trucks. So we've got this tore out. Like I said, we'd take a look at the valve bore and inspect some things. And like I say, the way this valve is and the way it runs in there, this puts a lot of load on this little guy here as it strokes. And so it does wear this end of the valve bore. I should be able to see it. Try and get a light in there. And for sure, I mean, almost without a light, we can almost see the groove in there that these little guys create from being so side loaded and so short that they're too unstable. So see if I can kind of block that a little so it's not too bright, doesn't just bleach it out. But yeah, you can see the groove on this end that I was talking about, and then you can see the actual wear spot through the anodizing down there. You can see that dark spot. So I say you don't even have to, these things are usually so wore out, especially on this end, that you don't even have to vacuum check them. You can just visibly look at them and go, yep, that's junk. So, you know, we like to vacuum check them after the repair, because we usually do start with the transgo setup, seeing as how that is approximately 10 thousandths that it takes out. And so is that if for some reason it comes back and we can actually ream it out again and restore it again with the Sonax setup. That way the valve body isn't junk yet. But on occasion they're wore out so bad that the transgo one still isn't quite enough. So we like to vacuum check after the repair to verify it, make sure it's all good. And yeah, we're pretty disappointed just over the years with what we see in these and the way things have gone. We used to be able to just get brand new valve bodies. You can't anymore. Once they changed the casting, you can see there's a little difference here versus there, and then up here you'll see it. Just a little bit difference in the casting. And so once they started with these in 19, you can no longer get these. And then it's almost like with the 19s, we're seeing them out of the box new, and they vacuum check terribly as well. And it's like the tooling's wore out, and it's just they don't care. It's like Chrysler just does not care. So we're working on, like I said, we're working on our solutions. First market will be for the 19 and newer, just because it's the simpler solution. And then we have a full solution that will actually end up fitting all years of the RFEs in the upper here that we're going to be doing. So yeah, we're pretty excited and figured we'd start getting you guys in the loop on what's going on.